piece. He said his piece. I said my piece. And then when someone else jumped into it and said their piece. But I didn't think they were, should have been kicked out. But they might have had a couple of drinks maybe, and they could have probably kept it going, and the game wouldn't have been about the game no more. So I think the referees did what they had to do.
Maybe they had some drinks. Who knows? There is only fans in 9 arenas right now, guys. Only 5 of those arenas, which does include Atlanta, allows fans to sit courtside. Now, it's important to note those courtside seats no closer than 10 feet from the court. All the fans in this arena are tested, in that area of the arena are tested. But this is the first type of tight fan interaction with players that we have seen since the coronavirus age began, Fizz. We are still fighting this pandemic. Do you feel fans should be allowed to sit this close right now?
I do. I think it's fine. If they're tested, and I know Adam Silver wouldn't take any chances, I do think we got to start trickling the fans back in. And I agree with him. Unless something crazy was said, this is the normal banter that goes on during the NBA game courtside. And so the only reason it stands out is because it's not a lot of people in the building. So it looks like it's more than it is. But if that was a packed building, come on, let's be real about it. No one would be kicking her out of the game right now. Right? It would just be a normal. It's about 30 other people in a packed building saying the same stuff, if not worse. And so that was, unfortunately, it's an empty building for it. But I do believe that we should start working our fans back in as the health codes allow it.
Listen, Rach, I enjoyed nothing more than going on the road and having a great conversation with the fans. I mean, that's something that really got me going. That's something I totally enjoyed, and I'm glad to see it. I mean, LeBron had a great answer. He it was some back and forth. They said their piece, but sometimes that gets players going. As long as it's done in the right way. I mean, look at LeBron is always interacting with the fans. I mean, that's part of the game. I loved it, especially on the road. I love to do that.
No, you are definitely one of the players, Paul, who I always felt that from. And LeBron has openly said, right? Remember at the beginning of all of this, he said, I don't even want to play without fans in the building. Some of you guys get so geeked up by it that it really makes a difference in your on-court play. And Fizz, we saw with LeBron right earlier, just in this same road trip, when a member of the Cavaliers front office made a little bit too celebratory of a celebration of his miss. What happened there too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just going to be what it is. It's part of the chirp. Like a guy like LeBron and a guy like Paul Pierce, when they go on the road, they don't want that fan to get kicked out. They're going to rip their heart out during the game. Yeah. They're going to try to dominate your team more. They're going to utterly destroy your team. And don't, God forbid, let it come down to the last shot. I've been on the other end of the Paul Pierce buzzer beaters. It hurts badly. Actually, I've been on the end of multiple. So, those guys live for that moment. And so I just think right now, without a big crowd, and guys seeking motivation and needing that extra oomph to really get up for these games, I think those kind of fans are kind of needed.
Well, LeBron certainly said the most gracious thing possible afterward, and then his tweet saying, "Courtside Karen, mad, pretty exceptional as well." All right, guys, coming up, winter. Paul, what's the basketball equivalent of 6 more weeks of winter?
Probably watching the worst teams in the NBA night in and night out until the season ends.
Yes, it's like NBA League Pass, but you only get teams that are out of the playoff picture. Like if that was what was on your TV. Yeah, that would be bad. That would be bad. Well, there you go. Welcome to The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols. I've got 2 NBA champs. We've got our resident coach, NBA Fizdale, of course, 2 rings with an assistant as Miami Heat. And 1998. Paul, you're not that old. 2008 Finals MVP. Paul Pierce, always very, very happy when you guys can both be here. We got LA represented up here today. Coming up, we're also going to talk LeBron because he had an interesting interaction with some courtside fans in Atlanta last night. Should there be fans this close at all right now? Well, LeBron actually said he's happy to have these lovely women in the arena. We will get into all of that in just a minute. Now that we've passed the quarter mark of this shortened NBA season, we have a pretty good feel of what a lot of teams' identities are. The Nets are a wild scoring machine. The Clippers are relentless. The Lakers are polished. The Sixers, who last year looked constantly stuck in cement, now have that smooth grooviness feel as they currently rule the East. But there are still plenty of teams trying to figure out exactly who and what they are. And the Suns and Mavericks, well, those are two of them. Both had high expectations going into the year. Both have had struggles with injuries and with COVID. But after a 3-day stretch in which they faced each other twice, only one of them seems to have found its footing. In fact, with last night's win, the Suns have now won 3 straight, pushing them to 6th in the West and only a half a game out of 4th. And the game, it wasn't pretty, but that's kind of the point. The ability to pull through a rough outing is one of the qualities that separates out whether teams really have it or not. And last night, Phoenix fell behind by as much as 11 before fighting its way to a thriller of a finish. Not surprisingly, Phoenix's backbone in this game was 35-year-old Chris Paul. 34 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. It was Chris who kept his teammates focused during a tug-of-war fourth quarter. And when the Suns found themselves down by 2 with less than a minute on the clock, it was Chris who ran a play that his old and now once again coach, Monty Williams, noted that he stole from CP's other old coach, Doc Rivers. Take a listen.
Either Chris Paul or Devin Booker will be involved here.
It is Paul with 6 seconds. Paul guarded well by Kleba. Now Booker squares up for 3 over Richardson with 1.5 left. Suns go in front. Dallas takes a timeout.
That was a brilliant executed play.
It really was. Nice screen by Ayton there, by the way. CP threading the pass despite being guarded by Kleba's 7-foot wingspan. And then Devin Booker with a clutch shot, just 1.5 on the clock. Now, technically, Booker wasn't supposed to even be in the game at that point. This was his first game back from a hamstring strain, and he was on a minutes restriction he had already surpassed. Here is Williams explaining.
I imagine if I would have taken Book out in the fourth, that would have been the first time you've seen a player knock a coach out on the sideline. So I just thought I'd stay away from that scenario and let him play as long as he was looking good.
Amazing. As for CP and Booker, the big brother, little brother relationship the Suns front office had hoped for when they traded for Chris seems to have fully taken root. After the game, CP says the two have reached a point they can push each other without mincing words, while Book said he's pretty much open to anything CP tells him.
You know, he's been in every situation, you know, that I want to get to. You know, so I have the cheat code of being alongside of him, his backcourt mate. You know, from on the court to off the court, just everything he does, you know, I'm a sponge to it.
I was telling the guys in the locker room, I don't know if I can ever retire because the emotional roller coaster that you go on during the game, like for real, like there's no high like that, the energy, you know, when you pissed and mad and then to, you know, the joy winning the games.
As for the Mavericks, well, their post-game press conferences, not nearly as chipper. Dallas had a foul to give before Book hit the game winner, but Kleba didn't use it on Paul. The exact kind of messed up detail that has plagued Dallas in what is now a 6-game losing streak. As for Doncic, well, remember a few days ago he said, quote, "It's looking like we don't care." Doncic was more positive last night, saying the Mavericks were close to climbing out of their slump, which is true. But just like the Suns' ability to fight through adversity for a win tells you something, the Mavericks' inability to do so is also telling right now. Dallas has choked up multiple leads during its losing streak. In fact, the past 12 times that Dallas has found itself in a one-score game, it's lost all 12 times, which is not what you want. The Mavericks are also the league's worst three-point shooting team and ranked 13th in the overall West standings, not just outside the playoff picture, but outside play-in game range as well. And look, we are only a little bit more than a quarter of the way through the season. There is time for the Mavericks to get it together. The Suns could still fall apart. But we are starting to feel like we know who these teams are, and that is a much nicer feeling for one of them than the other. Paul, at this point in the season, who are the Suns to you?
They're a legitimate playoff team. I'm going off what I saw from them last year in the bubble. They added Chris Paul, and that's all I think this team really needed was some leadership. He developed a culture there in Phoenix, a well-respected veteran who knows how to win. And, you know, this team hasn't been to the playoffs in a long time, so playoff expectations are right in front of their eyes, and I think they can make it.
Absolutely. Paul, you are hitting it on the head, and I think we got to give a lot of credit to James Jones, my guy from the Heat. I won titles with him. I think he had a vision from the beginning. He brought in Monty Williams to go with Devin Booker, a guy that's going to hold him accountable, a guy that's going to run dynamic stuff for him. And then they finished it off with Chris Paul. And Chris Paul, we know he is the ultimate competitor. I guarantee you this guy plays horseshoes. He gets pissed if he loses. So you put him together with a guy like Devin Booker, and those two guys working together. Like, Devin Booker's a smart kid. You heard everything he said was the exact right thing you want to hear from him. And those two together, that's a playoff basketball team, and I wouldn't want to match up with them.
Now, Paul, Monty was talking about how he kind of lifted that play, as everyone in the NBA does, right? Y'all borrow from each other. It's a play that Doc Rivers used to run for Chris Paul and J.J. Redick. Do you recognize that from when you played with those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a play we ran even for Ray Allen out in Boston. I've seen that play come through on many, many occasions.